Hey guys, so we'll be reviewing a fic today, or maybe not so much reviewing as talking about it. Or I guess you guys won't be able to talk about it with me, but I'll be able to talk about it with you. But at the same time, I need you guys to read this fic before I start talking about it, so as usual, link is below in the description bar. Please pause my video and go check it out. Read through the entire thing. Give it two reads. Just read it through a second time, just to make sure that you got everything. This story is very interesting in its delivery. It's called, in case my link doesn't bring you to the right one, please inform me. It's called A Fleeting Light in the Darkness, and hopefully you guys will get something out of it, and you'll find it as interesting as I did. So go ahead and do that. So hopefully you guys have read the story by now, and if you haven't, I strongly suggest that you do, because what I'm about to say might not make a lot of sense to you, but holy goodness, that was one of the best fics I've read in a while. This isn't going to be like my other review where I messed up and start talking about stuff I don't understand, because obviously this is non-canon, but honestly this is probably one of the best dark fics I've read in a while that wasn't like a, well, I guess you could still call it grimdark, but I mean, that wasn't explicitly gory in any way. But as you guys have probably read the story, or I'm not even sure where to start with this story, because the story in of itself is a giant puzzle. It's one of those, it has that unique ability to let the reader kind of submerge themselves as much as they want in the story. If you want to read the story and get creeped out by the kind of world that the author has put forth, if you want to be scared by the faces that are shown throughout the year or talked about through the entire thing, and the fact that ponies are disappearing constantly, that's your prerogative. You can just scratch the surface of this entire fic. If you want to delve deeper into it, try to figure out what's happening, use some of the clues that the author has put in. I'm aware that he's removed quite a bit of them, but I still think that there are enough that you can come to a pretty decent conclusion on your own about all this. And then feel free to do that as well. And the best part about it is that the author never tells you, this is how far you have to go. He actually told someone in the comments, from what I was reading, said that he knows what happened. He had this entire story planned out. He knows exactly what happened, and he has it in his head, but he didn't give it to us. And I think that kind of, I know I rag on people sometimes, like in my one review for Cutie Mark Crusaders Forever by my buddy Sai, I said that not giving the result of the Cutie Mark Crusaders deaths, not giving us reason or how it happened, kind of lessened the blow of the death. But at the same time, when someone does this, it kind of makes it stronger. I'll explain the difference. In the Cutie Mark Crusaders Forever, I want an explanation on why two young fillies died randomly. Just because when my mind starts thinking of stuff, it's too broad. When a guy who's writing grimdark doesn't tell you how an entire city full of ponies can just disappear in the span of a few days, your mind conjures up, again, so many topics, but each one's more kind of grim and evil than the last one, and that kind of adds to the fear of the entire thing, rather than the confusion that Cutie Mark Crusaders did. I'm sorry, Cypher, ragging on you, but I have to use you as an example here. So the fact that you create your own fear, do you want to believe it's the worst your mind can come up with? That's what the story kind of evolves into. And the fact that the author kind of gives that ability to you makes that you can be afraid as much as you can handle. If you want to think that it's all a dream, hey, maybe it is. If you want to not be afraid and think it's all a dream, go for it. If you want to think that they all vanished because of some evil dark creature from the mythos of history in a book from the old equestrian settlers, that's part of your prerogative as well. So the story gives us that entire thing, and the way it's written was interesting. I've never been a fan of reading someone else's journal and stories, but I think there is no other way that anyone could have delivered this story, because well, number one, the way it was set up, the fact that they found the journal in the town afterwards, But the fact that if you saw this from first-person perspective of Twilight, you would see too much. You would see everything rather than the choice words that Twilight decided to put down, which adds to the mystery and adds to the whole intrigue of the entire thing, and adds to the horror element of it as well, because you know that this entire thing has already been planned out, and you're just waiting to see what's on the next page. So that's my personal opinion on how good, why I think the story is good. Let's talk about the story in of itself for a second, and some of the clues and hints, and I'll give you guys my personal take on what could have happened in this story. Now, if you guys don't want your personal opinions corrupted by mine, you can stop watching the video now, because I don't think I'm going to touch on anything else. But I don't think that my personal opinions will corrupt yours. And if you have any... well, I guess I'll go into that after. So, the story apparently had lots of clues and puzzles and parts in it that the author took out because people were saying it's distracting from the story. But there are a few that are still left in it, and I'm just going to go over the ones that I found with you. The title. All the capitalized letters in the title, you see that the title is kind of capitalized schizophrenically throughout it. If you take all the capital letters in the title and the two lines where the eyes should be, and put it into, and then anagram it, which means mix around the letters until they form a word. One of the possible combinations is all else failed, which is the final three words of this entire story, which I thought was a nice little nod, because it's not something that's required for you to understand to get this entire story, but it's also something that if you do get it, you're like, oh, well, there you go. You can know the entirety of this story just by reading the title. And I thought that was a good bit of well done piece on the author's part, so I like to point that out whenever I can. I remember when Sai first showed me this story, he's like, oh, there's all these puzzles in it and stuff, and I was just like, why is the title like that? And he's like, I don't know, man, I don't know. There's supposed to be like a puzzle in the title, but he took it out, and I was just like, write down everything. I wrote it all down in Skype, and then I mixed up the letters a few times, and then I wrote down all else failed at the bottom, and Sai just flipped his shit. But enough about me reminiscing about old times. Let's continue on with this story. One of the most important puzzles that you can find, I'm sure most of you found it if you read the comments, or maybe you didn't, and maybe you should go back and check it out, is that if you reverse the colors, new messages appear that were written in invisible ink. So you can either highlight your entire story, you can get it that way, or you can reverse the colors and get it that way. I don't know what else to say to that. That's absolutely brilliant. You write the words in white so they don't appear on white paper, but any other color that they do. I gotta say, this guy is taking interactive fanfic writing to a new level, or probably. I'm not sure. I don't read too many interactive fan fictions, but I mean, I thought that was kind of cool. And the messages are interesting in and of themselves because they kind of point to the fact that someone is writing down... well, I guess we'll get to that when I talk about what I think actually happened. There's one final puzzle that I wanted to talk about. Oh, yes, and it's not really a puzzle, but more of a kind of something I noticed that was kind of odd. The dates that Twilight put down for her journal continue after the date that the people, or what are they? They're detectives or guards or something, found her journal. They say they found it on the 6th, or April 16th. Twilight's entries go all the way to the 26th, I believe. One moment, so I'm looking at the story as we go through this. To at least the 29th, and then there's one entry without a date. So, 13 days after they found the journal, Twilight was still writing, apparently, according to her dating system. Now, I don't think that's a puzzle. I don't know why I grouped it in with puzzle, but I always thought that was interesting, something I like to point out to people so they can kind of just gather on that, because a lot of people skip the little date things and they don't realize that that's a factor. So, with that out of the way, I just want to talk to you guys quickly about what I think happened. Maybe if you guys want, you can leave what you think happened in the description for the comments. So I'd like to hear from people who differ from my point of view, because hey, Who knows? You could be like mad right, and I could read your response and be like, that is the greatest thing ever. So I've kind of allowed 3 theories to take precedence in my mind. First one is that something happened to them. Now, this one's a complete shot in the dark and would be kind of odd if it was the real response, but they've kind of been... the entire town of Ponyville has been teleported into this kind of alternate reality in which a best example would be of Stephen King, The Mist. I don't know if you guys have read the book or seen the movie. The book and the movie differ slightly, but they have the entire idea of it is that a mist covers the entire town, and there are creatures in the mist, and they've been thinking that somehow they've been teleported into an alternate universe, or there's been testing done at the military facility nearby. So that doesn't seem as likely, but it does seem like something that could happen. Now, do I think that that's the most likely? Like I said, I don't think that's the most likely one, and I would be really surprised if it was the realistic one. But that is one that people have mentioned that I said could be, for the lack of evidence, which I know I said was a great thing, but with the lack of evidence, that might be something that it could be true. Alright, so the next idea is a bit more grounded in facts from the story. Would be that Twilight mentioned something, these creatures that she read about in old lore. Sorry, I am scrolling up to see it because, like I always tell you guys, I don't take notes. I think they're shadow walkers. Hey, shout out to me in the story. But they're shadow walkers, and she doesn't go into too much detail, but apparently she researched them, and Fluttershy took the pages out when she disappeared. Now, because of the fact that we don't have any information on these shadow walkers, they could entertain the best possibility of what is happening. But unfortunately, we don't know what they do. We don't know if they're even real. They're old myths from, from Northern Equestria, back from when the Everfree was discovered. They're supposedly seeing odd... Apparently the old foresters saw odd things in the forest, and they would call them shadow walkers because they would only see them from the corner of their eye. Now, the only thing that's the problem with that is that the only page that talks about that has been ripped. And even though it was ripped and they filled in the letters, if you'll notice, the grammar doesn't exactly mesh up. So there are letters here and there missing, or words here and there missing. So like if you read it, it says, I think I finally found something from ghosts, goblins, and ghoulish figures too. Took a bit of searching, but I found something that seems to match what's happening little bit. Now, obviously that's not Twilight, because Twilight would fill that in with perfect grammar, I'm assuming, even in a situation such as dire as this. So the page has been ripped and words are missing. So we can't rule out the fact that whoever ripped the page is hiding information. Now, someone pointed out in the comments the fact that the detectives didn't go to the pages on the book specified by Twilight in order to find out what happened. That makes a lot of sense to me personally, but you know what? I mean, the comment makes a lot of sense that why didn't the detectives do this? But hey, they were reading the journal, so maybe they went and did it right after. Who knows? Again, the story is kind of skimps on the details to let the reader decide how deep they want to put themselves into it. So there's always that idea of shadow walkers. Again, without actual information on what they do or what kind of creature they are or how dangerous they are, we can't exactly say that it was 100% them, because hey, shadow walkers might be pretend. I mean, we all see stuff out of the corner of our eye every so often. It's human reflex to be afraid of shadows, and seeing stuff out of the corner of your eye is a normal biological reaction. We get scared of stuff like that because we need to be on the lookout for danger, or at least our predecessors had to, or our ancestors had to. So that's not a new thing, you know? So putting logic into MLP doesn't work sometimes, but I'm assuming that's something. Now, the last option might be the longest stretch, but I also like it the most personally, and I think that if I had to go on stand and say what I really think happened, I would say that this one is probably the most likely. And that is that Twilight has lost her mind completely. Well, let's not say lost her mind. At the beginning of the story, Twilight says that she's doing some experiments with Poison Joke. Now, no more needs to be said that Poison Joke kind of affects ponies differently. It even says, as Twilight even notes in her notebook, has a rather unpredictable effect on ponies, and I thought a few experiments might prove helpful to understanding it. Now, if she wasn't careful with that, there could be dire consequences, but we don't really know what those are. Now, the next entry in her journal is the one on April Fool's Day, where Pinky starts out with the invisible ink that I told you guys about earlier, that you can see hidden messages throughout the entire story. It's also when the first invisible ink message pops up. The invisible ink message reads as follows, just to double check just to make sure you guys can get this. If she only knew what lied on the road ahead, what waited in the shadows. Now, this can mean one of two things. Either someone close to Twilight, within the last couple pages, Rarity, Spike, Pinkie Pie, Fluttershy, wrote that in her book with invisible ink, or someone knew that this was going to happen and wrote it ahead of time. Now, I'm not ruling out the fact that Fluttershy or Pinkie Pie or Rarity wrote this, but I think it's most likely that Twilight wrote it for the sole reason that when Rarity, Pinkie Pie, and Fluttershy came to Twilight's house, they did not have any invisible ink with them. And Twilight probably would have thrown out all the invisible ink that she had. So my main idea is that either Twilight's mental state became so eroded that she started writing these messages to herself from day one, or the Poison Joke affected her somehow and gave her a split personality disorder, a bipolar disorder, if you will, in which she would write to herself in the invisible ink. Maybe her alternate personality saved some of the ink and was using that to write. Something, I guess, there's something about bipolar personality disorder that a lot of people don't understand. I'm getting into psychology here, and that is that usually with the bipolar personality disorder, there is one personality that knows about both, and the other one is none the wiser of the first. So her evil, we'll call it personality, knows about her good personality, but her good personality has no idea about her evil one. And if that's the case, that would explain why the messages said, if only she knew what laid on the roads ahead, not if only I knew. So her evil personality is talking to her good personality in that sense. I think that Twilight has kind of, her mental state has devolved to a point where she is hallucinating. She is seeing things. She is lost, basically. Now, again, without all the information, I can't guarantee that this is the correct answer. But I honestly think that it's probably the most likely. Now, I also want to say that throughout the entire journal, it's handwritten except for 3 entries, and those are the 2 dream entries and the final entry in the journal, which is written just, what'd they say, last page of the journal. It's entirely in print, so only 3 pages were in print, her 2 dream sequences and the final page. And I noticed something about them. For some reason, the way that the dream sequences and her normal, the dream sequences, the last page, and her normal writing, they seem to be different. Just the way that they're planned out. I don't really know how to explain it. Just if you read those three and then read the rest of her journal, it seems like someone entirely different is writing them. Now, the dream sequences are undoubtedly Twilight. Undoubtedly. Because she mentions seeing all of her friends there. And so that means that... and the last one is undoubtedly Twilight as well, because she says Pinky is gone, Rarity is gone, and she pushes Spike into the darkness. So why is her writing so different in those parts? I think, especially since I actually just realized this now, her last entry in her journal, it says that she's being surrounded by the darkness as she is kind of writing. Why would she write in this situation? It just seems kind of odd to me that someone who is on the precipice of disaster kind of decides that the best course of action is to write it down in a journal. So those are my personal opinions. I don't know if this has been a waste of your guys' time or not. Again, like I said, I haven't been reviewing lately because a lot of the stuff that I come across is I don't understand, as you saw by my last review. So thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate it. Have a fantastic day, and I will talk to you guys later. One last thing, you guys. I just want to mention something really quick. I did a video with someone from Sugar Cube Radio. Name is I did a co-op review, or whatever you want to call it, with the Shadow Mans, and we reviewed Sweet Apple Massacre together. Link to that video is down below underneath the link to the fan fiction if you guys want to go check it out. I really appreciate the fact that the Shadow Mans gave me a chance to be on their videos, and that Sugar Cube Radio gave me the chance for me to be on their channel. If you guys like, I guess, show reviews, fan fiction reviews, and readings, you should go check out the channel. Maybe you'll find something you like. You never know. So, like I said, link to my my co-op review with the Shadow Mans is there, and you can find the link to Sugar Cube Radio through that by clicking on the owner of the video. So thank you guys for checking that out if you feel like it, and if you don't, I completely understand. And I will see you guys later.